Right, hello everyone. Good afternoon. And we have the next lunch and talk. So this afternoon we're going to have Professor Hannah Thompson and Dr. Sophie Boris speak to us about the Sensational Museum and they've got a workshop for us to do. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. We've got a graveyard shift, but I think that we might be the most interesting graveyard shift.
Also, we're going to get you guys to do quite a lot of the work. So, just to warn you.
Yeah, I mean, just before we go through, slight misnomer. Everybody thinks that we are an actual museum. I'm sorry to say we're not, but your museum could be the Sensational Museum. Our museum could be the Sensational Museum. Oh no, it's not moving forward now. Have I switched it? Oh, hang on. Oh. Aha. So just very quickly on this, I know we've had some introductions today where you've noticed people have been giving a visual description. That's potentially come from us. And largely the point of that, to give you a reasoning behind it, is that there are certain people, Hannah, if you don't mind me using you as an example, where it's not easy to identify somebody from the clear visual, as Hannah is somebody who's partially blind. So having something that is the descriptor, so for example, a beautiful orange top over there, Hannah can be like, yep, that's that person, and connecting a name and a pronoun to make sure that we address you properly. So please don't feel like you have to out yourself with anything. You don't even have to say you're white. You don't have to say you're a woman if that's not what you want to do, for example. Just enough for us to be able to visually locate you in the space. So there are a few things on there. So name, pronouns, hair color, length, clothing description, and any identifying features. So for me, I've got short, brownish hair. I have glasses that should be on my face, but are on my head. I'm wearing a kind of floralish, very large top. And unfortunately, none of my tattoos are out today, so you get no identifying features. And yeah, my name is Sophie, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Hannah, and as Sophie mentioned, I'm partially blind. My white cane is just folded up on the table. I've got kind of blondish, greyish, shoulder-length hair. I'm also wearing glasses. I'm quite short. That's pretty much it for us. So in terms of yeah. The other thing to say about visual descriptions is that one of the reasons we like using it is well, obviously as an access tool, but also just to get you guys thinking about how visual the world is and how much time you spend thinking or kind of communicating through sight, because that's something that's kind of that this project's gonna hopefully question.
Fingers crossed. We've got a slide up, Hannah, now about just the sort of setting up of the project.
Yeah, I can do that. So the Sensational Museum is a research project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. And so it's based in academia, in universities. But it's really, really important to us that it's a project that's happening in partnership with museums. So the Scottish Museums Federation is one of our partners, and we're really grateful to be invited to present the project to you. The reason that we want to have people like the Scottish Museums Federation as partners is so that we can reach a lot of museum professionals, because what our research project is about creating some new piloting some new resources and then evaluating how they work in museums. And hopefully at the end of that, we'll be able to share some good practice and some like really concrete ways of changing how museums work. So yeah, as I said, it's a multi institutional team. So I'm a critical disability studies academic. Sophie is a public history postdoc. We've also got a psychologist, we've got a designer, and we've got a museum studies specialist on the academic side. And then we've also got all these various different partnerships. So part of part of the project is about disability advocacy, part of it is about museum practice, and part of it is about kind of design. So it's really interdisciplinary, and what we're trying to do is challenge systemic, implicit and explicit ableist biases. So in other words, we're trying to reveal how the way that museums are constructed and the way that we understand museums has been based on ways of thinking about humans, ways of thinking about the body, which are quite exclusionary, so which favor some ways of doing things over other ways of doing things. And specifically, museums are very oculocentric. So in other words, traditionally, they rely on vision. So you kind of assume that your visitors are going to be sighted and that they're going to use their sense of sight to read labels, follow signage, experience whatever it is. And there's always lots of really excellent ways that museums cater for people who are not sighted. But these tend to be like on the edges. So you might have a large print guide, or you might have like a handling object or something. But that's kind of like the exception rather than the rule. And what we're trying to do is take all the really good work that happens for minority audiences and put it in the center of what the museum does for everyone. So that in our ideal world, anyone could go to a museum and decide which senses they would like to use to access the museum, and that would be okay. So you might want to use sight, but you might have also forgotten your reading glasses or got a headache and just want to listen. So in other words, our motto is kind of that no one sense is necessary or sufficient to access museums. It's a kind of a big ask, isn't it?
Smaller.
And we're tapping into that the new ICOM definition of museums, which they coined, or that they developed, I think it was last year or the year before, which is how can museums create welcoming, inclusive, engaging, and polyphonic spaces that are accessible to all visitors, so disabled and non-disabled, in other words, to everyone. So there are two strands to the project. Do you want to talk about the strands?
Yeah. And I won't waffle on too long because we've got some fun stuff to do. But so there is Hannah, who is at the top of our project, and we're so grateful to have her here as the principal investigator. And below that, but we're not going to call it below. The things that then diverge are, we have our strand A and our strand B. I'm on strand A, which I like to think is the less sexy side of museums, which is the back of house collections information. And what is it that we're actually recording about our collections? I realize I put the word object up there, and it very much should not be there, because object assumes, that we just work with the 3D, the touchable, the tangible. And then we have strand B, which our colleagues at Westminster, and wonderfully primarily in the fields of kind of design and psychology, are looking at how you communicate the kind of object life cycle beyond and to visitors and outwardly. What does that look like when you try and work with a variety of sensory engagement types to get that stuff done? And there's a lot of stuff there that feels very sort of academic-y speak. But I think, again, as Hannah said, very much no one sense alone should be sufficient or necessary to get into stuff. You immediately exclude at least one person by doing that type of thing. And it's definitely more than one. And thinking about ways that are equitable and progressive about how we use the senses. It doesn't have to be so literal or so basic, because we have so much good stuff up our sleeves that I just don't think we're putting into force yet. And we're very much doing our work with and for disabled communities as well. We've been very lucky for people from the Curating for Change scheme, which is in the I think it's just England, isn't it? Yeah. But essentially it's a scheme for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people to work in the industry, 18-month internship, and they have done the most phenomenal stuff. It's ended up being about disability history, the exhibitions that they've put forward, but I don't think it necessarily had to be that. But they have been an absolute delight to work with and really make us question what we're doing. And lastly, whatever we're doing here and the type of thing we're trying to throw at you right now, we want to make this sustainable, make it something that you can integrate in the type of work you do, because if we make it very ethereal and confusing and something that costs too much, for example, it's not going to do its job. We can't then add more barriers as we try and break down even more.
We're really aware that a lot of museums have just, got one paid member of staff. There are lots of volunteers in the sector, and so whatever we kind of come up with, it needs to be really kind of low budget, scalable, and kind of.
And I think very much in the spirit of what today is, it's collective work. A lot of this is, you don't have to feel like you're alone when you do this. Everybody has their own sensory experiences of collections that are in your organizations and things that you work with. Pull that, it matters what people say, and actually that takes a bit of pressure off in terms of you having to have some sort of objective truth about your stuff. And it's fun, if nothing else. And I think, is it time for me to lull everyone to... Have we? No, not yet. It'll be after.
Okay, right.
Okay, so in fact, I'm going to sit down for this, if that's all right. So I want you to come on a little journey with me, and this is to help prepare us for our activity that we're going to do afterwards. And essentially, we are going to go to the stores to find something that you're going to use in about 10 minutes. And so, if you will, I'd like you to settle in for a little multi-sensory world building with me, but very much in here, because unfortunately I can't take you to the space, but I think that's kind of cooler. One of the things to say here as well is that try and use all of your sensory engagements. There's we talk about this a lot. There's this thing called aphantasia, which essentially means that you cannot create a mental picture in your head. It's just nothing. And so actually thinking in the sense of we don't want to be visual, we're not even really using an actual eye, and we still managed to originally make it about imagining and seeing. So try and feel, try and smell, try and taste, try and do all the things that are in there as you move through the space. If you don't want to do this, please don't worry, just sit and listen to me tell you a story. But if you are comfortable, get yourself kind of nicely sat, shrug your shoulders back a little bit as well, shake your head, give yourself that kind of opportunity to slump a little bit, and forgive me, and give yourself that relaxed posture. And if you feel comfortable to do so and you're able to do so, please either close your eyes or develop a soft focus on something. If you'd like to keep your eyes completely open, please do. And we're going to do 3 controlled breaths in and out, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Each time you exhale, if you can try and feel a little more comfortable in your physical position that you're in. And again, engaging as many senses as you can during this exercise, not relying on your mind's eye alone here. I want you to now start breathing nice and slow. Keep it in that nice controlled breath, and start to give attention to how your body feels in contact with itself and the things around you. So starting with the space that you're in, can you sense the contact of your body with the chair or your feet with the floor below? Thinking about the space, do you find the room that you're in a little bit too chilly right now? Is there a draft that's coming in? Are your hands burning a little bit from being outside and suddenly come back into the warmth? Or is the temperature exactly right and you're feeling really comfortable right now? And maybe inside, do you feel your heart rate slow as you relax, or a sense of dizziness from having your eyes closed or out of focus? You're now at the entrance of a large storage space with high corrugated iron ceilings. There's a maze of metal racking in front of you and even more beyond the immediate vista. On these racking is a variety of brown cardboard collection boxes and white plastic rectangular tubs with white labels and thick black marker writing on them. As you pause here for a moment, you notice how cold it is, even with the extra layer you always wear to keep warm in here. A colleague from conservation is working at a table nearby where you are, ready to put their ear defenders on as they scrape and polish a cylindrical, hollow cord, 3-foot long, dark and rusted metal object that appears to be exceptionally heavy. You can almost taste the rust as dust comes off in clouds as they start their work to restore it with their sander. But that's not why you're here today. So you move forward into the racking maze as the loud sound of buzzing continues in the background. And you notice you're making a soft thudding or muted sound as you traverse the solid stone flooring. As you head to the back wall of the storage space, you're being careful not to catch your extra layers that distort your sense of how wide you are on the racking and boxes as you move through. You go to the racking corridor furthest to your right on the back wall, and halfway down there's an opening on your right. Above this opening, there is a beam at the top between the racking opening that also has a few brown collection boxes sat on it, creating a type of archway you have to pass under. And in front of you are 2 tall, heavy metal doors. You use all your body strength to open one side to enter the room, being careful to notice the slight ramping on the floor so that you don't trip. The room now has the deep, loud hum of a dehumidifier, and you see a number of enclosed shelves with roller racking, each one with a black, 3-pronged metal roller handle. Moving halfway down the set of roller racks, you start to turn one of the handles, and you see all the handles of all the other shelves move in sync as you open up the hidden space you need to find the thing you came in for. There's a slight ramp up again, which you take note of as you enter this little corridor. You scan the shelves with your eyes and notice a long, white, corrugated plastic box on the bottom shelf. You pick it up and turn to come back out of the secret corridor. Distracted by your sense of relief for finding what you came in for, this time you forget the little ramp is there, catching yourself oddly as you move over it and sending a nervous jump into your stomach. Both you and your enclosed object are thankfully still fine. You take the object to a table close to the dehumidifier, its hum vibrating heavier in your ears as you approach. You pull a folded piece of paper out of your pocket with information from the collection's database on it. Having prepared for this, knowing that Wi-Fi doesn't reach here to use your laptop or phone. You unfold and flatten down the creases of the stiff paper and grab a pair of bold purple nitrile gloves from the box on the table, struggling a little to put them on as your hands are stiff from the cold of the storage space. You carefully take off the lid and see a box of coins that have made-to-measure packing material with little cutouts so you can slip your fingers in to carefully prise them out. You safely put the lid back on the box and ensure you carry it back to the office while being able to open and close all the doors you need to pass back through. So your work done, you then take yourself back out into the main storage space and wind your way back through the maze of racking, perhaps a different way than you came in, as really you can't remember which route you took the first time. The taste and smell of rust are still on the air as you take a final, deep, chilly breath and leave the collection store into the more familiar and much warmer corridor to take the box of coins up to your colleagues waiting for you in the office. So thank you for coming on that journey with me. And just to kind of get you out of probably that very relaxed in your brain state. If we can go for a few more breaths in and out, big deep ones. And if you haven't already, when you're ready, open up your eyes again and reorientate yourself in the immediate space. She says, "Can I just go up that page?" So though I hope that was fun, if nothing else, I hope it shows you a few other things, that there are far more embodied elements of museum work than we give ourselves time to think about. How much of that movement through the space you have to think about, and more obstacles and things you have to think about there, which I also have to think about in my work. But also, even though this is a workplace scenario, this is how you do your lives day to day, every day, how you experience the world. So this is not some sort of special way of thinking about things. It's just reminding yourself that you can do this. And finally, I think there's a lot of this that we are trying really hard to think about how we then record this, both for kind of collections information, but then how you share that with other people, how you bring that out and communicate it. So, with that being said, we now have those coins. Oh my gosh, they've magically appeared on the table. And there are, oh, I forgot to turn that off. So, just to confuse you even more with this, did you know that there are not 5 senses? That's one of our things that our colleague from Westminster loves to tell us, but it's very true. We have got very used to talking about, taste, smell, touch, sound. What's the other one?
Sight.
Sight. Oh yeah. But yeah, you could have 3, 9, 21, more, infinite, depending on the scale in which you describe them. But today we're just going to give you 10 to hopefully get you thinking before we get with the coins. So the kind of classical 5 are there that you expect, but we also have, if you notice the first 4 there is balance, how you kind of understand the sort of positioning of yourself. These 2 are my favorite. So there is the external body, so proprioception. So how do you understand yourself in the space around you? Like you're in a space that has 4 walls and windows that go beyond that to something else. And then interoception, which I think might be the coolest one, is how you kind of understand your inner self. So what is going on inside your body? And a lot of this you can't really feel. Your nervous system isn't telling you what's happening until it really needs to. But also how you just, in of yourself, aside from what's around you, how do you understand yourself? And pain being a very specific one to that as well. Pain can show itself and appear in very different ways. And again, yes, so sight, smell, sound, taste, temperature being part of that as well. How hot and cold. Some people split those out as well to hot and cold being very distinct things. And then touch. And in combination, these can make infinite numbers of ways that you experience the world. So just talking about 5, I mean, I haven't given you 21. I could have given you 21, but I haven't. But even just those 10 take us further than something that feels quite basic, I hope. Anyway, that is largely enough of me talking. And what we're going to do now is we have an activity for you, and I hope that what we've done to kind of prepare you for this, put you in the right mindset for trying our slightly bizarre piece of work, which is thinking about the sensory properties. It's all right, Danny. The sensory properties of these coins. Now, we're giving you a paper copy, but we're also, forgive us, it's a little bit small, but these are all the questions that will be on that piece of paper anyway. But if you need to refer to it, that's there. However, if you would also like me to switch back to the slide about senses, I'm very happy to do that. But essentially, it's a matter of you kind of, spend a bit of time with yourself, those questions, those coins, and then speak with other people on your table. Have an opportunity to share your thoughts on it. It starts from, I suppose, the more obvious or the kind of descriptive type stuff to then sort of touching it. There's some great questions in there, by the way, that were designed by our colleague on the other strand. And then the last one is more about those emotive types of things.
Exactly the right amount.
Are there any questions before we crack on?
Don't worry, it's all right. Don't move.
See, Hannah's distracting people at the back.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. But yeah, I mean, like, this is what we've basically done. We've come to you with some pennies and said, think about it. But we'll come back. I know there's lots of things. So then we'll come back and have a quick conversation about this after, about what time are we on? What time we finish? Is it 20 past?
Yeah.
So let's, have about maybe 15
15
minutes.
10, 15 minutes. What we'd like you, basically we'd like you to use the prompts on the sheet or on the slide to try and describe these coins. Try and focus on describing them to someone who isn't here. Okay, what kind of information you might give them. So, and you can obviously you can
please do hand.
they're not museum coins. Okay.
Also, Hannah's son told us something very interesting yesterday, that metal doesn't smell. Metal smells of you interacting with the metal. And I was like,
that's why it's really important that you hold them and see if they all smell the same. Or do they make your hands smell different, or just really, just really go for it. Oh, does it?
you smell of the metal.
Right. So do you think?
The diets.
Oh,
I haven't done anything. I've done enough. These aren't my coins. Like, for once, it's not my fault. Like,
It's mine. Maybe that's senses, but yeah. So, and then the pockets reflect that. So, the most pungent money I smelt was
right.
yeah.
just after the 1890s. So,
We had to bring some. Hannah was like, I'll bring my coin purse. Like, thank you.
So many curious.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, correct. Slash, they're just not on holiday and they never get spent. So,
A pocket full of coins.
and I think like the first set of stuff is where it gets really like, okay, how do we talk about this? Smell is a really hard one.
So that's a
We talk about it a lot, as you don't really have.
Okay, that's a
obviously-
classic museum.
I say this as if you didn't have the most amazing session talking about smelly mushrooms. This pales into comparison, unfortunately.
Culture and adventure.
But that's the thing, right? Because we were saying, like, for example, we can talk about your notebook as like it's orange. We don't say it looks like an orange, as in like the fruit. It looks like the orange, or a persimmon or something. You don't have to compare it to something. It just is. And I don't think we've quite got there. With things
Okay.
that smell, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's just how that works. It's starting to colour is much more formative and safe.
Yeah.
Which is then usually
I say let's go back.
it's like this really when you describe smell of light, you can say it smells metallic.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
smell maybe.
Metal objects. So you're like,
Exactly.
it smells metallic.
So-
What do different guys
describe it? How do you describe it?
I mean, they do. It just depends on how they react with your hand. But you know, and even if you say something like it smells sour or sweet, that's also about taste as much as it is smell. So
I definitely know that it's so impressive though. Right.
and I think that even with vision, I think we've got so used to assuming that everybody is seeing the same stuff as well. But even taking it
both
away from
those
someone who's like partially blind, who does see the world differently.
names of other
You know,
things.
we have different perceptions of color.
That's
Spatial awareness,
We're
of those things. And I think once you recognize, as you said, like we're taking it away from the objective. It makes it pretty
because
cool,
we don't have
but
words.
anyway, I'm sorry, I'm distracting you for thinking about coins.
So that's a good one.
Sorry, I've come to bother you.
So I'm pretty excited. 53 different senses you have.
Oh, yeah, sensory.
It's going to blow my mind.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there are so many. There are so many. So I was like, I'll stick with 10. 10 feels like we've covered enough.
It's great, because I just love this stuff.
It's amazing. But it's
Yeah,
like
go
the favourite fact. There's also a great fact, which I think there's one of those questions around the touching and interacting that says, how do you think it would feel in your mouth, I think?
Oh, yeah.
So, fun fact for you from the person on project who works on smell and taste. She says, you could look at anything in this room and know how it feels in your mouth.
That's basically.
I could see that I could develop it too.
Right? Yeah, but you'd know because when you're developing as a child, you learn the world through your mouth.
When you put the individual ones
Right?
together, they make.
So you know more about the feel of something through your mouth than you would potentially by touching it.
You put your top things.
Mm.
It's not racist.
Yeah, it's like I'm just.
You touch stuff like this.
I know that food was slightly bumpy, and I know exactly.
Yeah.
I still want to touch anyway, just to get that satisfaction.
Exactly.
Like, yes, man, is what it's like. Maybe because
Oh, they have the.
As I said, that's why I'm always like, just touch it though.
Yeah.
Just touch it.
I was trying to only had a water bottle, and sprayed the text on it, and I was like,
Because I guess what ours, you tend to have them more like in a.
I don't even count.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so you'd never really have thought about gender in relation to coins, right? But as soon as you start thinking about the sounds, then you've gone down this thing about gender. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing we've been finding is that really.
Yeah.
When they start thinking about
Audio
different
and visual,
senses, then
I
they
usually
start
that
like
I like these are safe,
adding
these feel right. You know, it's like, oh, I can have a
memories or
recording of
emotions or
something,
experience,
and then even if it's a
So it can
recording,
be
I can have a
really
transcript that's safe. That's
of
fine.
getting
A video,
more
I can do
out
the
of-
same thing.
more out of an
And which is
object.
why,
would
for example, the
just
question I asked, I forget who it was, about like, oh, are you just taking photographs? Because
Yeah.
but also, well, you've immediately cut yourself off.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you give to that when you're because it seemed like they have such amazing collections that I want to know the texture that I'm looking for. Is one of them going to be smoother when I come to it, or grittier, or something like that? And again, I said to Hannah, I was like, we're never blaming anybody because if you haven't thought, we spend our lives thinking about this now, but for us to come to you and be like, maybe it's worth that just for somebody else to be able to have a gateway into what we're doing.
we made a proportionate transition to say, no, we can't do the 21 sentences, the 10 sentences,
Absolutely.
but for every object, we're going to do one more of the file, and therefore we can search for
Here's an example.
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
No
I
one,
mean,
no one carries
a couple of things we're trying to do. First of all, is give the potential to say this stuff. It's not necessarily that you have to; it's that you know that there's the opportunity to do it.
Twice in a situation where I'd
The
have to
second
drive
is to
to
know that
machine
you
because
can pull that
machine
information
was
out.
broken and I was like, I haven't got any
When you
car.
take it
Like, I
strip
don't
it back, a lot of this stuff is very personal, very cultural, and emotional, and it's okay to do that. But I don't think museums are quite trust themselves to say that. Like, I promise you can just think about what it feels like in your mouth.
It's true that when I go on holiday, I do tend to have to have.
Anyway, I'll let you keep considering the coins and enjoy your many senses.
So, because when I went to the States a couple of weeks ago, and for 10 days I didn't use cash once. I literally just didn't have any. I had my card the whole time.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, that's really interesting. We're talking about well, we've had a whole thing about gender. Which is really interesting. About the sound of coins is quite linked with men because they keep them in their pockets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like that whole thing about like handbags were basically invented for women to feel unsafe, which is really interesting
Oh.
in terms of something like, because men have pockets and lots of things to put it in, but that external bag is like, you have all your stuff in it, but it's also it's power play. I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's interesting to think about it in those ways, and yeah, very much jangling coins in a pocket and actually having the capacity for pockets that actually have the capacity. Just any pockets. It's like, because no woman will ever wear a dress with pockets and not tell you that it has pockets. Ever. Because it's like, right? Yeah, correct. It's a privilege. It is the pure privilege of a pocket. Like,
Well, in European history of clothing, pockets are quite recent
yeah.
because everybody would have a pouch, male or female.
And it just never seemed to shift that way for women. It's very curious. Or at least like the fashion industry now decides we still don't need. It's like, I just want pockets, all the pockets.
But then, I think that's not to do with gender, it's to do with the type of garb. So trousers, male or female, have pockets. Skirts or kilts don't have pockets.
Don't have, yeah.
And here, given that we're in Scotland, kilts are a man's garment, but it's a skirted garment.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Maybe we just need to convince all men to wear kilts so you can be like, feel the non-pockets,
Yeah.
feel it, experience. Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so
Always be more Scottish is the answer.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Anyway. Another noise,
Yeah.
rather than the jingle, is the susurration.
Oh, say more about it.
That's a lovely word. What did you just say? Susurration.
If you rub it, you can hear that.
I used to sit there. See, I've just spent my entire time as well, that kind of the sound of the.
And that for me is coins, because my dad used to be the treasurer in the kirk. And he would count the collection after the service, which was all coins.
Yeah, yeah.
He would shoot the coins into his hand.
And that kind of like.
And that's kind of sliding. So for me, it's not the coins binding, the coins sliding is the most evocative.
Also, that's coins together. It's the coins together. I think in isolation they don't
Yeah.
quite. How lovely! How lovely! Oh, we should do this more often.
Yeah, we should. So, shall we?
I've also noticed
Yeah.
this one here, it's not a coin.
What was it? What is it?
It's a Ted Baker.
Yeah.
logo.
I was like,
It's not a coin at all.
I wonder how that got in there.
Sneaky.
Or at least it's not money. It's from.
No one's gonna.
testing to see
Yeah, so it's
paying attention.
Ted Baker's a clothing brand, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, right. It's a
So
pattern,
it
yeah.
says East West, Ted is best.
Tennis.
And then in the front it says Ted Baker, London, established
I work in
1993.
the little shopping.
So yeah,
Oh, that's what I always hope for. I'm like, but does it work in the trolley?
it will,
I'm all right with that.
it will have been an accessory to a garment.
Yeah. So should we do a bit of sharing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Let's see what the noisy trolleys go. So shall we? So what we'd quite like to do now is we'd quite like to hear a little bit from you about what that was like, what that experience was like. Did you feel like you had more to say about the coins than you were expecting? So do you guys want to? Have you got any examples of like interesting things that you said about the coins? Yeah. Right. That's really interesting. So there's a kind of so it's quite surprising that they're not that they're light. Would it occur to you if you were cataloging coins to talk about their weight?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. But would you do it? How would you do it in terms of like? Would you do it precisely scientifically in terms of like milligrams or whatever? Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting because I'm not sure how if that then translated to the interpretation, how people would understand that. You know. That's
But people would feel it.
Mm.
Yeah, even though we don't necessarily think about it consciously, but we would really notice if we picked up two coins the same size and one of them is 1% lighter than the other.
Yeah, you notice. Yeah.
Because you can identify a way to be by the coin by how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's interesting. So actually, coins are quite a like coins are something that everyone touches, right? So they're quite naturally multisensory. Because we touch them, and then you, as you said, there's a smell that like stays on your hands. But if they're in a museum setting, they're quite often behind glass. So that's really different from how like people would interact with them. So so thinking about them in a multisensory way really brings out different stories that you might not think about otherwise. Did you guys have anything about sense and point?
Yeah, we just, one is with lots of the prompts there around that object. They know what you're doing with the museum. This is really helpful. We think that, my thing was, because I'm an older person, this reminds me of smell, reminds me of going to school with lunches.
Yes.
Tiny tobacco tin, literally, as I was taking it, I can smell this and just take me back. Scurrying around on Wednesday morning, trying to find lunch tins.
So we have you thought it's listed on tobacco as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
That's fabulous.
So what we were trying to do, what do you want to explain what the point of this exercise?
I mean, I
We
guess.
were trying to, what we were trying to get you to think about.
Well, so there's a few things we've got up on the screen as well, but largely, I suppose a pre-question for that is, how much did you really get into the visual of the coins? Like, did you go there? Was that the most important stuff you were headed for, or was it other stuff that you went to first? I mean, I realize we've given you a list of stuff, but
Something we're doing with government points, value in some of the bigger courses, payment, money, and what it really takes. Do represent some of it, yeah.
I think without the questions, I would have immediately focused on the visuals, but because of the question, it was really good to make you think about other aspects.
I'm glad more than anything.
That's kind of what we've designed the questions as. It's a series of prompts which encourages people to not focus on the visual, but to because it's easy to talk about the visual, right? We do that all the time. That's just like that's second nature. But what's harder is to really focus on the senses which we've been taught are not as important. You know, like touch, smell, taste. What it might feel like if you put it in your mouth. You know.
Well, yeah, so I was saying to this group over here, one of the people on the project, one of her favorite things to say is, you could look at anything in this room and know how it feels in your mouth. Like you actually could, because when you're growing up, when you're little, you learn the world through your mouth, and now you can still do it. So you can probably tell me far more about how that coin, in that case, feels in your mouth than you could looking at it. Be like, oh yeah, it feels a bit like I can feel it clanging on my teeth, and I can feel that thing. Not that you want to, but I like to play that on the train, by the way. So then people then look at like carriage seats and just go. It's very magical. You should try it. It's a really fun party trick now. But
The other question is, what did I notice? Not what to talk about.
Yes.
Partly because you have framed the discussion in a certain way, and partly because the way I look at the world, I often get comments of it like, "Oh, you're talking about that as if you're a museum person." So that immediately stopped me saying all the other things that I just noticed. You know, so I find it interesting that even in a discussion about multisensory, I found that my initial reaction, I felt that people weren't interested in giving me a reaction because they were attributing it to my profession rather than to my personality. I'm not saying that in any way that's just
No, I get it.
It's interesting, yeah.
Because I think coming back to, I suppose, the core points of this type of work, so thinking about my colleague's strand as much as mine, is that, first of all, hopefully we were able to build you up to this type of thinking. This is not something that we expect people to just be able to do like that. It's hard. We've spent a lot of time trying to think in these ways. And to be honest, Charlotte's workshops, the stuff that she's pushing forward, it takes, days and days and days to, teach the people in the back of house to then give this type of stuff to people that they're coming to co-create the work with them. I'm trying to remember what my second point was. But yeah, and largely it's a matter of giving you permission, but also the space for a change of mindset on this stuff and recognizing where value lies. Is it in the visual? Is it in just having the stuff? Or is it that you are allowed and you're given permission in the back of house to say, I noticed this and that's really cool. And it's okay that it's me, that one person noticing this, and my colleague might notice something else. And it's very much something that needs to be a collaborative effort of thought and engagement. And there are things that do need to be very functional. You need to know all those registration things, or when you're doing loan moves, that matters, it does. But that shouldn't be the only reason you're basically hoarding stuff in a storage space that has so much to it. And even just some coins that sit in your pocket, there is way more to those than how they'd be displayed in a museum. And what time are we on? What time do we finish? Well, I suppose the question is, do we want to go through those, or do we want to have does anybody have any questions that they want to throw at us?
But in the same as you're relatable touch.
Mm-hmm.
You're there. So for somebody that you do that, maybe it's something that somebody did in, or somebody uses in another part.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to something like that. It just shows you as soon as you move from one strength to another. You may realize that I'm making sense of it. Genius.
Right? Yeah, let's go back. Let's talk about this. But that's it. So actually what you've said there is really important, because it's not about using one of those things. You use all of this stuff in combination, give them equity across how you would then present it, and say, any which way you come at this, you can still have a valuable experience from that. And it's the opportunity for people to find their gateway in. Because as you said, we all touched it, but some people vision will be a way they can think about it as well. And it's just giving more than just, there's a thing.
Yeah. And not just accepting that, but seeing that as a virtue.
Definitely.
Like that's a positive, because you might get someone to describe to you or to speak how it feels to touch something.
Yeah.
Right. So we were having this conversation about how conservators have privileged access to objects. You're in Sophie's example, the colleague who was sandblasting the tube, right? They're having a tactile interaction, and they're the only person that's allowed to touch it. But if they wrote it down, or took some photos of it, or wrote a poem, or made an audio recording and made that available to everyone, then suddenly that has become a shared experience, which, so everyone can be a bit like a conservator for a bit.
And respond to it as well.
And respond to it. And some people might go, well, actually, I like looking. I'm more comfortable just looking at something. But someone else might say, oh, do you know what? It's the smell of it that I really, really like. And that makes me think about this memory or that story or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's about kind of having optionality, but valuing all that experience.
Yeah.
And trying to capture it from visitors in a way, because they're the people that are coming in and
Totally
interacting.
Yeah. Giving more space for that. Yeah.
So yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts or comments, questions about the prompts? We've gone the prompts, or
It's just a question. Making an function for when you speaking collection.
So we are my side's a partner with Collections Trust, so we vote. No, don't worry, because I'd rather us be very transparent about this. So yeah, and we work closely with Kevin Gosling in particular, who's sort of top up there, and he's very on board and very willing with this. And I know that if we go to him and say, come on, we need some what do we call it? Well, actually, we have a sensory spectrum, but not that spectrum. To say that actually, if we're going to get people to do this, we need to embed this in what is the basic, right? Like, we need to start changing that. Absolutely.
Like they can link with accreditation as well. And
That's where I want it. I'm like, I
Yeah.
want it in the full spectrum accreditation section. It's like basic information. I would love that to happen because so
No, I
watch
challenge
this space.
designing a kind of cloud-based data, what would you call it?
Almost like a collections management system, but I suppose with little letters rather than big ones. So that's my job. And at the moment, I'm sort of envisaging it a little bit like if you made Facebook for people and collection items, and then together they have a lovely time and talk to each other. But that's TBC. Yes, of course.
How would you making the object or the statement or the content available and accessible to people?
Yeah, such a good question.
It's a difficult one, and I think so. Jessica and I were having a brief conversation about this. I think largely this comes down to a conservation point of view. I think that's where the power is held in terms of touching, engaging, doing those things, and actually, I think. I mean, this is more a personal opinion, I guess, is that there needs to be some control that is let go of certain things where it can be given, because culturally, there's a very white Western way of thinking about collections care. So, for example, we had a really great example from somebody at one of my workshops who said they have the London Maori group come in every so often, and they come and wake up the objects, and they hold them, and they speak to them, and they'll touch them, and they'll warm them up. And that's their version of conservation, right? So I think it's more that that's where it's going to be difficult, but it's very much like, how do we get people on board? And again, it's that mindset, stakeholders, those things. But you're right, it does become a concern. And I think sometimes it's a matter of noticing that not letting something be itself is not doing justice to why have it if you're not going to give space for that time. And it's not a matter of everybody coming around the museum and touching it. It's more giving the space for those interactions to happen where it's safe and necessary and valuable. I hope that was an answer.
Was it yeah.
Oh my, don't even. I was like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. But it's because they're talking to their ancestors through those objects, and they're saying, they've lost their actual geographical place of being, and they'll tell them like, everything's all right, here's what we're doing, and it's just, ooh.
I noticed this morning when Lizzie was talking about the zoo, and she said that, or I think it was in response to a question, she said that they kind of like let people hold something which weighs the same as a penguin's egg. So that's a really, because obviously you can't be having children holding penguins' eggs. I mean, that's
Yeah.
but to have something, I mean, it would just be like chaos, right? But to have something, because presumably they're either really heavy or really light. They're like surprising in their weight, right? So to have, I think that because that kind of sensation really it'll mark you and you won't forget it.
Yeah.
But don't just do it for the kids.
Absolutely.
Because
we are so.
One of the things that we're really trying to push back on is this idea that a museum is like a serious, or like a place with lots of objects, and then you've got like the fun kind of kids bit. But you probably know that it's the parents that always have the most fun in those kind of areas, right? So why not just have that as like just for everyone?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
as Hannah said something really wonderful earlier. It's like we were talking about children with additional needs. It was 30-something%, was it?
36%. Yeah.
Right. So and Hannah said that 36%, they become adults, and we forget about them when they're an adult. It's like or they're patronized as they move forward. And actually, I know, and I'm confident in our colleagues on the other side for communication to start making good change. And Chloe is looking at me expectantly.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
This until the AGM starts, and we've also seen it.
yeah,
So,
I mean, they could have come in. No one's here.
I'm going to come and collect the coin. Going to come and collect my
Just to
dad's
say,
coin.
our email addresses and website are up.
You're the museum from